And still on COVID-19 elsewhere in Germany, the country has decided to ease COVID restrictions for schools and kindergartens. As you can imagine, it's a hotly debated topic, especially with unvaccinated youngsters being among the main drivers of the country's fourth wave of the pandemic. It's back to school time across Europe and coinciding with the return to classrooms amid the still ongoing pandemic. Germany is relaxing quarantine measures for in-person learning. For more, let's bring in DW correspondent Nicole Fröhlich. She joins us from Berlin with more. Nicole, how is Germany planning to deal with COVID in classrooms in the new school year?
Germany is working to mitigate the disruptive effects COVID has been having on children's lives, especially when it comes to education. Until now, there hadn't been a unified strategy, though every state and every city had their own way, which led to a very confusing overall scenario. So now state leaders have agreed on a joint way forward to avoid chaotic dips in and out of quarantine of entire classes every time one of the pupils contracts COVID. Only close contacts of the infected child will have to self-isolate. Vaccinated children won't have to quarantine at all, and that is a similar approach to the one we're seeing in France and Spain, for example. But the situation becomes a little more complicated in kindergartens and primary schools, where it's a lot harder to enforce health protocols. Plus, kids under 12 cannot yet be vaccinated in Germany, so it's a step forward, but probably not the last adjustment of the strategy here.
But Nicole, this of course affects families, teachers, policymakers. How has the decision been received so far?
Well, any debate involving children and COVID is bound to be a heated one, and this one is, of course, no exception. Some medical associations say that this is more than enough and that the dangers of a COVID infection for young children are acceptable compared to the damage inflicted by continued isolation. Parents and certain politicians, though, accuse the new guidelines of being oblivious to the dangers of more aggressive variants, and some are even calling it a violation of the children's bodily integrity. Educators, too, are not too happy. Many say this new approach is too short-sighted. They complain that we're heading into the third pandemic school year without a realistic contingency plan on the table, especially for institutions where enforcing COVID guidelines is more difficult, like schools for children with special needs. They are wary of seeing people make the rules who appear to not understand the dynamics of the educational environment and are now pinning their hopes on more kids getting vaccinated rather than leaders making sound decisions.
Now, a lot of the uncertainty regarding school children stems from the fact that they're mostly still unvaccinated. How is the inoculation drive among minors progressing? Nicole.
Germany is in the middle of a fourth wave that is being driven mainly by the unvaccinated population. Many of them, sadly, young people who haven't yet had the chance to be immunized. 23% of 12 to 17-year-olds have been fully vaccinated so far, and uptake is really big among the younger population. But what's causing concern now is a stagnation among the adult population. 61% of Germans have received 2 shots, but that, according to Germany's leading virologist, is not nearly enough to get the country through the fall. He foresees an increase in hospitalizations that will lead to new contact restrictions as soon as October. The health minister doesn't disagree, but says that those restrictions would not apply to vaccinated people or those who have recovered from a COVID infection, trying to mobilize more people to get the shot by branding it as a ticket to freedom of sorts, while always insisting on not making it mandatory.
Nicole Fröhlich is with DW from Berlin.